Most people don't realize this until years later. Anxiety doesn't arrive all at once. It grows quietly. At first, it's just overthinking. Then it becomes hesitation. Then it starts shaping your decisions. You avoid things not because you can't do them, but because your mind predicts discomfort. And slowly, without noticing, you build your life around staying calm instead of becoming strong. That's the danger most people miss. Anxiety doesn't ruin your life dramatically. It narrows it. It makes you choose what feels safe over what actually matters. This audiobook exists to stop that progression. Not after burnout, not after panic becomes normal, not after your confidence slowly disappears. Now, because the longer anxiety runs in the background, the more your brain treats it as truth. And once something feels normal, you stop questioning it. Understanding why your mind feels anxious is the fastest way to break that loop. Not by fighting thoughts, not by forcing calm, but by seeing the pattern before it hardens. If you've ever felt like you're living cautiously, like you're capable of more than you're allowing yourself to reach, this is your moment to interrupt that path. Like the video, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and share this with someone whose life is getting smaller, even if they haven't noticed it yet. Chapter 1. The false alarm inside your head. Anxiety feels personal, like a flaw in your character, like your mind is betraying you at the worst possible moments. But anxiety isn't proof that you're weak. It's proof that your brain is doing its job too aggressively. It's an overprotective security system that can't tell the difference between a real intruder and a shadow on the wall. And if you've been living with that system blaring day after day, it makes sense that you're exhausted. Not because you can't handle life, but because your mind has been running emergency drills in the middle of ordinary days. Imagine a smoke alarm in your kitchen. Its entire purpose is to detect danger early, to warn you before fire spreads. That's a good tool. But if that smoke alarm goes off every time you toast bread, you don't blame yourself for being startled. You don't call yourself pathetic for flinching. You recognize the device is too sensitive. Anxiety is that smoke alarm. It is sensitivity without precision. It is warning without clarity. It is your body preparing for impact when nothing is actually hitting you. Your brain evolved to keep you alive, not to keep you calm. Thousands of years ago, the anxious human wasn't the embarrassing one. The anxious human was the survivor, the one who heard a twig snap and assumed predator instead of wind, the one who scanned the horizon, who stored extra food, who stayed alert at night. That brain got passed on. Now it lives in a world of emails, bills, conversations, deadlines, and social pressure. The brain still scans for threats, but modern threats are rarely solved by running or fighting. They're solved by thinking, waiting, talking, performing. That mismatch creates a special kind of suffering. Your body revs up to sprint, while your life demands that you sit still and smile. A man named Arjun learned this the hard way. On paper, his life looked stable. Decent job, supportive partner, no obvious disaster. Yet every morning he woke up with a tight chest and a racing mind. He kept asking, "What's wrong with me?" He tried to reason with himself. Nothing bad is happening. But the body doesn't speak logic first, it speaks sensation. He started avoiding meetings, skipping workouts, canceling dinners. The world got smaller. The smaller it got, the more threatening it felt, because when your life shrinks, every remaining moment becomes heavier. Eventually, Arjun wasn't living. He was managing symptoms. What changed wasn't a magical cure. It was understanding the mechanics. Anxiety is not one thing, it's a chain reaction. It starts with uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers prediction. Prediction triggers threat interpretation. Threat interpretation triggers the stress response. The stress response produces sensations like heat, tightness, nausea, trembling, dizziness. Then your mind notices those sensations and tries to explain them. And because your brain is a meaning-making machine, it often explains them with the worst possible story. Something is wrong, I'm not safe, I'm going to fail, I'm going to lose control. That story spikes the alarm again and the loop tightens. This is why you can't simply stop thinking about it. The loop isn't only thought, it's biology, attention, and habit. Anxiety trains you to monitor yourself constantly. You start checking your heart, your breathing, your tone of voice, your performance, your facial expressions, your future. It's like driving while staring at the engine temperature gauge. The more you look, the more you notice tiny fluctuations, and the more those fluctuations feel like danger. The mind becomes a surveillance camera pointed inward. Another reason anxiety feels relentless is because your brain treats unresolved issues like open tabs. Every unfinished task, every avoided conversation, every delayed decision becomes mental background noise. Your brain keeps whispering, "Don't forget this, don't mess up, stay ready." It tries to protect you through pressure, but pressure doesn't create peace, it creates urgency. And urgency, when it has nowhere to go, becomes anxiety. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your anxious mind isn't trying to harm you, it's trying to control outcomes. Anxiety is often the price of wanting certainty in a world that doesn't offer it. The mind says, "If I worry enough, I'll be prepared." It confuses worrying with planning. Planning produces steps. Worrying produces spinning. Planning ends. Worrying repeats. Planning strengthens you. Worrying drains you. So how do you fix it? You don't fix anxiety by winning arguments with your thoughts. You fix it by retraining your alarm system through evidence and repetition. You teach your brain a new pattern. We can feel discomfort and still be safe. We can have uncertainty and still move. We can have sensations and still function. You don't eliminate the alarm. You calibrate it. Start with the body because the body is the front door of anxiety. When your nervous system is activated, your thinking becomes narrower and more catastrophic. Your job is to send your body a signal that the emergency has passed. This is not a spiritual concept. This is circuitry. Slow breathing is one of the fastest ways to change that circuitry. Not shallow, frantic breaths. Slower, deeper breaths that extend the exhale. The exhale is a brake pedal. When you lengthen it, you tell the vagus nerve, "We're not running." You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to do it consistently enough that your body starts believing you. Next, you change your relationship with the sensations. Most people fear the symptoms more than they fear the situation. The dizziness becomes, "I'm going to faint." The racing heart becomes, "I'm having a heart attack." The tight throat becomes, "I can't breathe." Those interpretations turn a harmless stress response into terror. A disciplined approach is to label the sensations for what they are: adrenaline, muscle tension, hypervigilance, stress chemistry. When you name it accurately, you stop feeding it a disaster story. You become an observer instead of a victim. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now let's make this practical in a way that actually holds up in real life. The next time anxiety hits, try this sequence. First, pause and plant your feet. Feel the floor, not as a cute trick, but as a reminder that you're here, not in the future. Second, breathe slower than you want to. Anxiety will demand speed. Your discipline answers with slowness. Third, say to yourself, this is my alarm system. It's loud, not accurate. Fourth, pick one simple action that matches the moment. If you're at work, open the document and write one sentence. If you're in a conversation, ask one question and listen. If you're in a store, stay in line for 30 seconds longer. The goal is not comfort. The goal is proof. Proof teaches the brain. Because your brain learns from behavior more than it learns from reassurance. When you avoid something, your brain concludes it was dangerous. Avoidance is a vote for fear. When you stay and act, your brain concludes it was survivable. Action is a vote for courage. Over time, those votes add up. Your brain becomes less reactive, not because you forced it, but because you trained it. There's also a hidden fuel that keeps anxiety burning: inconsistent standards. When you demand perfection, your brain anticipates failure constantly. When you demand universal approval, your brain scans for rejection constantly. When you demand certainty, your brain panics at ambiguity constantly. Fixing anxiety often requires upgrading your philosophy. Adopt standards you can actually live by. Replace, I must get this right, with, I will handle it if it goes wrong. Replace, they must like me, with, I will respect myself. Replace, I must be sure, with, I can act without certainty. Arjun practiced this in small, deliberate ways. He stopped trying to feel ready before meetings. He walked into them while anxious and stayed anyway. He stopped chasing perfect sleep and focused on consistent wake times. He stopped checking his pulse. He started doing slow exhales whenever the urge to check showed up. He stopped treating anxiety like an enemy and started treating it like a signal. I'm trying to control something again. His life expanded. Not all at once, but steadily, like a room getting brighter as you open the curtains. You'll notice something important as you begin. Anxiety doesn't disappear just because you understand it. Understanding gives you a map, but walking the path requires repetition. The brain changes through experience. Each time you respond differently, you lay a new track, and at first it will feel unnatural. That's a good sign. It means you're not following the old groove. Your mind feels anxious because it's trained to detect threat, chase certainty, and interpret discomfort as danger. You fix it by reconditioning your nervous system, correcting the stories attached to sensations, and proving through action that you can tolerate the wave without obeying it. This is not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming steady. As you step into the rest of this audiobook, consider what your anxiety has been trying to protect you from, and what it has cost you to keep listening to it. When your alarm goes off, do you treat it as truth or as a signal? What sensations do you interpret as danger, and what would change if you labeled them as temporary chemistry instead? If you stopped waiting to feel ready, what is one small action you would take today that your future self would thank you for? Chapter 2. The Attention Trap That Feeds Your Anxiety. Last chapter, you saw anxiety for what it really is. A false alarm, loud but not accurate, powered by a nervous system that learned to treat uncertainty like danger. You also learned that the fastest lever isn't arguing with thoughts. It's sending the body a clear signal of safety and proving through action that discomfort is survivable. Now we go deeper into the mechanism that keeps the alarm ringing even when nothing is happening. Where your attention goes, your anxiety grows. An anxious mind is not just a mind that worries. It is a mind that tracks. It tracks sensations. It tracks outcomes. It tracks people's reactions. It tracks time. It tracks every possible mistake, like a cashier counting coins twice because one day long ago they were short $1. And the tracking feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels like being prepared. But it's not preparation. It's rehearsal of disaster. Picture a spotlight on a dark stage. Whatever the light lands on becomes the whole show. Anxiety steals your spotlight and points it at threats, then convinces you the threats are everywhere because that's all you can see. You could be sitting in a quiet room, safe, fed, sheltered, and your spotlight can still find danger by focusing on a heartbeat, a thought, a memory, a word you said earlier, a meeting that hasn't happened yet. The mind doesn't need fire to trigger the smoke alarm when the spotlight is trained to search for smoke. This is why anxiety can feel like it appears out of nowhere. It doesn't. It's built, moment by moment, through attention habits you've practiced for years without realizing it. Every time you check for danger, you reinforce the belief that danger is likely. Every time you scan your body to see if you're okay, you train your brain to think you might not be. Every time you replay a conversation, you teach your nervous system that social moments are threats that must be analyzed afterward. The mind becomes a detective who never closes the case. A woman named Mira described it as living with an inner courtroom. She would wake up and immediately review the day like a lawyer preparing arguments. What if I mess up that presentation? What if my voice shakes? What if they notice I'm anxious? What if I can't sleep tonight? What if I get sick? What if something happens to my family? She was not weak. She was vigilant. And vigilance, when it becomes a lifestyle, turns your body into a battlefield. Mira tried to control anxiety by controlling thoughts. She told herself to stop. She tried to think positive, but the spotlight kept snapping back to threat because attention is not controlled by wishes. It is controlled by training. Your attention follows what you repeatedly treat as important. And when you treat danger checking as important, the mind becomes brilliant at finding danger. Here's a direct truth that changes the game. Anxiety is often not the problem, it's the strategy. The strategy is constant monitoring. The strategy is trying to guarantee safety through attention. And the strategy backfires because attention is a magnifier. It doesn't just notice fear. It multiplies it. Think of a microphone too close to a speaker. A small sound enters, the speaker amplifies it, the microphone catches the amplified sound, and the loop screams. That's anxiety. A tiny sensation, a minor doubt, a passing thought enters the system. Your attention amplifies it. The amplified signal creates more sensation. Your attention catches the new sensation and amplifies again. Soon you're not reacting to reality, you're reacting to the feedback loop. So how do you fix it? You stop treating every signal as an emergency broadcast. You retrain your attention to become steady, selective, and deliberate. This is not about ignoring reality. It's about refusing to hand your spotlight to your fear. Start with one of the most effective interventions there is because it attacks the loop at its core. Stop checking. Not stop feeling. Stop checking. Checking is the behavior that tells your brain, this might be dangerous. Checking your pulse, checking your breathing, checking your phone for reassurance, checking your partner's tone, checking the internet for symptoms, checking the calendar 10 times, checking your thoughts to see if they're gone. Every check is a small ritual of mistrust. It says, I can't handle not knowing. Discipline here looks simple and feels uncomfortable. When the urge to check rises, you pause, you label it, urge. You breathe slower than you want to. Then you delay the check by 2 minutes. You don't need to win forever. You need to win right now. 2 minutes becomes 5, 5 becomes 10. Over time, your brain learns the urge peaks and falls on its own. You learn that you can ride a wave without obeying it. That is freedom. Next, you stop giving your mind unlimited time to worry. Anxiety loves open-ended space. It loves the blurry hours where nothing is decided. Give it boundaries. Choose a daily worry window, the same time every day, 15 minutes. During that window, you're allowed to worry as intensely as you want. Outside that window, when worry shows up, you say, not now, later. And you write the worry down, one sentence, and return to the task in front of you. This trains the brain that worry is not a master. It is an appointment. People resist this because they think worry is necessary to prevent bad outcomes. But watch what worry actually does. Most worries are not solvable problems. They are uncertainty disguised as responsibility. The mind asks for answers that don't exist. What if they judge me? What if something goes wrong? What if I don't feel okay? Those aren't problems to solve. They are feelings to tolerate. And tolerance is built through exposure, not debate. Exposure is a word people misunderstand. They think it means throwing yourself into terror. It doesn't. It means stepping toward what you avoid in small, consistent doses until your nervous system updates its prediction. Avoidance teaches danger. Exposure teaches survivability. If your anxiety spikes during social situations, your exposure might be staying in a conversation 30 seconds longer than you want, then 1 minute, then 2. If your anxiety spikes during work tasks, your exposure might be starting the task while anxious and staying engaged for 5 minutes without escaping into distraction. If your anxiety spikes around bodily sensations, your exposure might be letting your heart race and not responding with checking or reassurance. You let the sensation exist without treating it as a crisis. You show your brain that sensations are not commands. Mira tested this in a disciplined way. She noticed her anxiety always surged right before she spoke in meetings. Her spotlight went to her throat, her voice, her breath. She would clear her throat repeatedly, sip water, avoid eye contact, delay speaking until the moment passed. She thought she was protecting herself. She was training fear. So she chose one exposure target, speak once early in every meeting. Not a perfect statement, one sentence. She would feel the surge, breathe slowly, and speak anyway. The first few times her heart pounded like a drum and she hated it, but she stayed, and something important happened. The meetings did not destroy her. The sensations rose, peaked, and fell. Her brain updated, we can do this. Her spotlight started to loosen. The alarm system began to recalibrate. Now let's talk about a tool that seems too simple until you practice it: attention switching. Anxiety makes you sticky. It glues your attention to the threat. Attention switching is the muscle that unsticks you. And like any muscle, it grows through repetition, not inspiration. Practice this once per day for 5 minutes. Sit still. Choose one anchor, like the feeling of your feet on the floor or the sound of your environment. Your mind will wander because minds wander. The moment you notice you've wandered, you return to the anchor without punishment. That return is the rep. You're training control, not calm. Calm arrives as a side effect. Control is the goal. In daily life, you use the same skill in motion. You catch your spotlight locked onto a fear story. You name it future, or judgment, or catastrophe. Then you move your attention to an action in the present. Read the next sentence. Wash the next dish. Send the next email. Lift the next rep. Take the next step. Your body learns through action that the present is manageable, even when the mind is loud. This is the shift most people never make. You stop trying to think your way into peace, and you act your way into steadiness. You stop negotiating with the alarm, and you start building evidence that you can function with it ringing. Because the truth is, your goal is not a silent mind. Your goal is a mind that can be loud without running your life. There is one more piece that matters because it explains why anxiety feels stronger when you're doing nothing. Your brain hates unused energy. Stress chemistry builds energy to solve problems. If you don't move it, it turns inward. That's why a short walk can reduce anxiety better than an hour of rumination. Movement converts tension into motion. It tells the nervous system, we are capable. You don't need extreme workouts. You need consistent discharge, 10 minutes of brisk walking, a set of push-ups, stretching with slow exhales, anything that shifts your state from trapped to active. And if you want your mind to stop treating everything as urgent, you must simplify your inputs. Anxiety thrives on constant stimulation. Endless news, endless scrolling, endless comparison, endless messages. Your attention becomes fragmented, and a fragmented mind is a fragile mind. Choose one block each day where you don't consume. No feeds, no headlines, no rabbit holes. Just your work, your body, your home, your life. Your attention needs a clean room to recover. By now you can see the pattern clearly. Anxiety isn't just fear. It's a habit of attention plus a habit of avoidance. You break it by reducing checking, setting boundaries around worry, practicing exposure, strengthening attention switching, moving your body, and cleaning up inputs. These are not theories. They are commands you give your nervous system through behavior. And behavior is what rewires the brain. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. As you move into the next part of this journey, notice what your spotlight is doing during the day, not during a crisis, but during ordinary moments. When you feel the urge to check, will you treat it as a command or as a wave that can pass? When worry shows up, will you let it take over your whole day, or will you give it a strict appointment and return to action? When you avoid something small, will you remember that avoidance is training your brain to fear, and that a tiny step forward is training it to trust? And if you practiced attention switching for 5 minutes a day, what kind of mind would you have in 30 days, 90 days, a year? A mind that obeys fear or a mind that leads it? Chapter 3. Your need for certainty is making you anxious. You've already seen that anxiety isn't proof you're broken. It's a system that learned to overreact. And you've started taking back control by changing your body's signals and your attention habits. You've also learned that checking and avoiding feel protective but actually train fear, while small, consistent action trains trust. Now we move to the deeper engine behind the entire pattern, the hidden addiction to certainty, and the identity you've built around staying in control. There's a reason anxiety keeps returning even after you understand it. Your mind isn't only trying to keep you safe. It's trying to guarantee outcomes. And the more your happiness depends on certainty, the more your brain treats uncertainty as a threat. Most people don't admit this, but anxiety often grows out of intelligence and high standards. You can imagine the future vividly. You can see consequences. You can plan. That ability is a gift. But when you use it to demand guarantees from life, it becomes a cage. The mind starts saying, if I can predict every risk, I can prevent pain. It turns into a private contract. I will worry now so I don't suffer later, except life doesn't sign that contract. Life does what life does. So the mind escalates. More scanning, more rehearsing, more controlling, more tension. Think of a person gripping a steering wheel with white knuckles while driving on a straight road. The tighter the grip, the more exhausting the drive becomes. Not because the road is dangerous, but because the driver refuses to relax even when relaxation is safe. Anxiety is that grip. It's the refusal to loosen control. A man named Daniel lived that way. He wasn't chaotic. He was disciplined, responsible, the one people relied on, but he couldn't tolerate loose ends. If a text went unanswered, his mind filled the silence with danger. If a colleague's tone felt off, he ran mental simulations all day. If his body felt slightly strange, he researched symptoms until midnight. He called it being careful, but what it really was a belief. Uncertainty equals danger. One night, Daniel was on a flight and turbulence hit. Nothing extreme, just enough to rattle cups and shake shoulders. Most passengers looked mildly annoyed. Daniel's body launched into full alert. He tried to control it by gathering information. He watched the flight attendants. He checked the seatbelt sign. He listened for announcements. He tracked every sound, every dip. His mind demanded certainty. Are we safe? How long will this last? What does that noise mean? And the more he chased certainty, the more powerless he felt because he couldn't get what he wanted. In that moment, the problem wasn't turbulence. The problem was the demand for guarantees in a situation that offers none. This is the central shift you must make. You don't reduce anxiety by controlling life. You reduce anxiety by controlling your response to not controlling life. Your mind will argue with that. It will say, but if I don't control it, something bad will happen. Sometimes something bad does happen. That's not pessimism. That's reality. The question is not whether you can prevent every negative outcome. You can't. The question is whether you can build a self that can handle negative outcomes without collapsing. That self is what calm is made of. Not a world without problems, but a person with strength. Anxiety weakens you when it convinces you that discomfort is unacceptable. That's why you chase reassurance. That's why you chase perfect plans. That's why you chase perfect performance. You are trying to avoid the feeling of being exposed. But exposure is part of life. Every meaningful thing involves it. Relationships involve exposure. Growth involves exposure. Leadership involves exposure. Even rest involves exposure because when you stop moving, you face your own mind. So the fix is not to eliminate exposure. It's to train your capacity to stand inside it. Here is the simplest framework that works when your mind is demanding certainty. Separate what you can control from what you can influence and from what you cannot touch. You control your actions and habits. You influence outcomes by showing up consistently. You cannot control other people's minds, random events, or the future. Anxiety happens when you waste energy trying to control the third category. Your job is to bring your energy back to the first. This is not a motivational poster. It's a daily practice. Every time you catch yourself spiraling, ask yourself, what is the next controllable action? Not the perfect plan, not the full solution. The next action. Send the email. Draft the outline. Drink water, take the walk. Tell the truth, close the tab, go to bed. One action is a rope you throw to yourself when you're drowning in uncertainty. But there's another layer most people miss. Anxiety is not only about control, it's about identity. If you've been anxious for a long time, you may have built an identity around being the careful one, the responsible one, the prepared one. You might secretly believe that worry is part of who you are. And if worry is who you are, then letting go feels dangerous because it feels like losing your edge. That's why calm can feel suspicious at first. You might have moments where you feel okay and your mind immediately says, "Wait, what are we forgetting?" You have trained yourself to associate peace with negligence, so you reintroduce worry to feel responsible again. That is the trap. To break it, you adopt a new identity with discipline. Not "I am anxious," not "I'm broken." A better identity is, "I am a person who can feel uncertainty and still act," or "I am a person who leads my nervous system instead of being led by it." Identity is powerful because your brain will work to stay consistent with it. If you repeatedly tell yourself you are fragile, you will protect fragility. If you repeatedly tell yourself you are capable, you will practice capability. Daniel began training this on purpose. He stopped labeling himself as a worrier. He stopped saying, "That's just me." He started saying, "That's an old pattern." That single shift matters. If it's an old pattern, it can be replaced. If it's you, it feels permanent. Then he added a practice that changed everything. He stopped bargaining with anxiety. Most people bargain. They say, "I'll do it if I feel better first," or "I'll go if I'm sure I won't panic," or "I'll speak if I'm confident." That's bargaining with a system designed to keep you cautious. It will never give you the guarantee you request. The disciplined move is different. You decide your actions based on values, not based on sensations. Values are not slogans. Values are chosen behaviors. If you value health, you move your body even when your mind complains. If you value courage, you have the conversation you keep avoiding. If you value leadership, you take the step you keep delaying. Values make you steady because they give you a compass when emotions shift. Try this in your own life. Identify one value you want to live by this week. Not a goal, a value. Integrity, courage, growth, presence. Then choose one behavior that proves it daily, even if small. If your value is courage, your behavior might be making one call you've been avoiding. If your value is presence, your behavior might be putting your phone away during meals. If your value is growth, your behavior might be starting the work for 10 minutes without waiting for motivation. The point is not intensity. The point is consistency. Consistency builds self-trust, and self-trust is the opposite of anxiety. Anxiety is the belief that you can't handle what's coming. Self-trust is the belief that you will handle what comes because you have handled things before and you will handle them again. This also changes how you relate to setbacks. When you demand certainty, setbacks feel like proof you were right to worry. When you build self-trust, setbacks feel like training. You stop asking, "How do I make sure nothing goes wrong?" You start asking, "How do I respond when something goes wrong?" That makes you resilient, and resilience quiets the alarm. There is a hard moment in this process that you must be ready for. When you stop chasing certainty, your mind will surge at first. It will throw bigger fears at you. It will say, "See, you're not safe." That surge is not failure, it's extinction. Old patterns fight to survive when you stop feeding them. If you stay steady through the surge, the pattern weakens. If you panic and return to reassurance, the pattern strengthens. So when the surge hits, do what you've been training. Slow your exhale. Label the urge. Take the next controllable action. Let uncertainty exist without treating it as a crisis. Then repeat. That's the work. That's the path. Daniel practiced on small uncertainties first. He left a message unanswered for an hour instead of responding immediately for reassurance. He let a minor doubt exist without solving it. He walked into situations without running mental rehearsals. He didn't become reckless, he became free. And as he became free, his nervous system began to learn a new lesson. Not everything needs to be controlled to be safe. If you want a single sentence to hold on to when anxiety demands certainty, make it this: I don't need to know how everything will turn out to know how I will show up. That sentence is a declaration of inner stability. It's not denial, it's leadership. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Now ask yourself, where in your life are you gripping the wheel too tightly? Not because the road is dangerous, but because you're addicted to guarantees. What would change if you measured success by the actions you control instead of the outcomes you can't? When anxiety tries to bargain with you, what value will you choose to act from anyway? And if you built self-trust one small behavior at a time, what kind of life would open up when uncertainty stops being a threat and becomes simply the price of living fully? Chapter 4. Your nervous system baseline is too high. By now you understand the pattern. Anxiety is a false alarm, and it grows when attention keeps checking, avoiding, and rehearsing danger. You've also started loosening the grip of certainty by returning to what you control, acting from values, and building self-trust through consistent steps. Now it's time to address something most people ignore until they hit a wall: your baseline state. If your nervous system lives on high alert all day, then even small stress will feel like a crisis. Think of your nervous system like the idle speed of an engine. If it's idling too high, the car feels jumpy even when you're parked. You touch the gas lightly and it surges. That's what happens when your baseline is elevated by sleep debt, constant stimulation, caffeine spikes, shallow breathing, unresolved tension, and nonstop mental load. The anxiety you feel in a moment is often the result of what you've been doing to your system for weeks. This is why some days anxiety feels manageable, and other days it feels unbearable, even when your life circumstances look the same. Your mind thinks it's about the situation, but your body knows the truth. You're running on a depleted battery. When your internal resources are low, your brain interprets normal challenges as threats, not because you're fragile, but because you're under-recovered. A woman named Sana realized this after months of telling herself she needed more confidence. She worked hard, showed up for everyone, tried to be strong. But she slept poorly, scrolled late at night, drank coffee to push through mornings, skipped meals, and lived in a constant hurry. She thought her anxiety was a mindset problem. It was also a fuel problem. One afternoon she had a simple task: meet a friend for tea, nothing high stakes, but her heart raced as she got ready. Her thoughts spiraled. She considered canceling. In the past, she would have tried to pep talk herself, forcing bravery through willpower alone. This time she paused and asked a different question. What state am I in before I even step out the door? The answer was obvious. She was wired and tired. She wasn't afraid of tea. She was carrying a nervous system that hadn't truly come down for months. Most people live like this without noticing. They keep their system activated all day with small stressors, then act surprised when they feel anxious. They treat anxiety like a random storm, but it's often a forecast. The body is telling you you've been operating above your capacity. Here's what you need to understand clearly. You can't think your way out of a body that's chronically overactivated. You can be disciplined, intelligent, and motivated and still feel anxious if your recovery is weak. Your nervous system needs a rhythm of activation and release, work and recovery, output and input, tension and relaxation. If you only do output, your baseline rises, and then anxiety becomes your new normal. The fix is not complicated, but it requires honesty and structure. You lower your baseline by treating recovery like training, not like a reward you earn after everything is done. If you wait until life calms down, you'll wait forever. Calm is built, not granted. Start with sleep, because sleep is the foundation that makes every other tool work. Poor sleep turns your brain into a threat detector. It reduces patience, increases emotional reactivity, and makes uncertainty feel sharper. You don't need a perfect bedtime routine. You need consistent timing. A stable wake-up time is more powerful than a perfect night. If your wake time is consistent, your body learns rhythm. And if you want to protect that rhythm, you stop negotiating with late-night stimulation. The phone in bed is not harmless. It's a signal to your brain that the day never ends. Your mind needs a clean boundary. Sana made one decision that changed everything. She set a shutdown time. Not a bedtime, a shutdown time. A point when she stopped consuming information and stopped solving problems. The first few nights her mind protested. It tried to pull her back into planning and scrolling, but she treated it like training. She accepted the discomfort and held the boundary. Within a week her mornings felt less frantic. Within a month her baseline dropped enough that anxiety no longer ruled her afternoons. Next, look at stimulants. Caffeine is not evil. But if your baseline is already high, caffeine can act like gasoline on a fire. Many people mistake caffeine-driven urgency for productivity. They feel busy and assume they're effective. But urgency is not effectiveness. Urgency is a nervous system in overdrive. If you rely on caffeine to function, don't shame yourself. Use that information. It means your recovery is insufficient. Start by tightening the timing. Avoid caffeine late in the day and avoid using it as a substitute for food. A jittery body plus an empty stomach is a recipe for anxiety sensations that your mind will misinterpret. If you want your mind to calm down, your blood sugar stability matters. Regular meals with real nutrition aren't a wellness trend. They're nervous system management. Now address the hidden stressor most people ignore: constant context switching. You jump from message to email to notification to headline to task to conversation to scrolling, all day long. Every switch is a small jolt. Your brain never settles. It never completes a loop. It lives in a state of half attention, and half attention is exhausting. Exhaustion makes fear louder. The disciplined approach is to create blocks of single-task focus. Not for 8 hours. Start with 20 minutes. One task. No checking. No bouncing. Your mind will itch to escape. That itch is the same urge you've been learning to ride. Stay anyway. Your brain will learn that it doesn't need constant novelty to survive. And as your attention stabilizes, your baseline drops. Then there is physical tension. Anxiety isn't just in your thoughts. It's in your jaw, your shoulders, your gut, your breath. People carry tension like armor, then wonder why they feel on edge. Your body can't relax if it thinks it must stay braced for impact. You must teach it to unclench. One of the most practical ways is to build short release rituals into the day. Not long meditation sessions that you never do, but brief resets that you actually repeat. 2 minutes of slower exhale breathing, a walk around the room, stretching the neck and shoulders with deliberate slowness, stepping outside and letting your eyes scan the horizon instead of a screen. These actions signal safety to your system in a language it understands. A man named Ravi used to finish work and carry his stress straight into the evening. He would sit with his family, but his body was still at the office. His mind was still chasing problems. He told himself he needed to be more present, but presence is not a moral achievement, it's a state. And states are created by transitions. So he created a transition ritual. Before entering his home, he would stand outside for 60 seconds. He would breathe with a longer exhale and drop his shoulders on purpose. Then he would decide one value for the evening: presence. That value wasn't a thought. It became a behavior. Phone away. Eyes up. One conversation at a time. Over time, his body learned that the day had an ending. His nervous system stopped carrying the alarm into every room. This matters because anxiety often persists when your life has no edges. Work bleeds into rest. Rest bleeds into scrolling. Scrolling bleeds into sleep. Sleep is shallow, so you wake up anxious and the cycle repeats. The fix is edges. Start and stop points. Rituals that mark transitions. A nervous system calms down when it knows what season it's in. There's another factor that is uncomfortable but powerful: emotional backlog. When you repeatedly swallow frustration, grief, resentment, or fear, it doesn't vanish. It becomes tension. It becomes that vague sense that something is wrong. People try to solve it with productivity, distraction, or reassurance. But what the system needs is release through honesty. This doesn't mean dramatic confrontations. It means truthful acknowledgement. It means naming what you feel without turning it into a crisis story. It means speaking when silence is costing you. It means setting boundaries instead of carrying quiet anger. A nervous system that's holding unspoken truth stays on guard because it knows you are not protecting yourself. Sana had to learn that part too. She wasn't only tired, she was overcommitted and underboundaried. She said yes to avoid disappointing people, and then paid the price in private anxiety. The moment she began saying no with calm clarity, her baseline shifted. Not instantly, but steadily. Because each boundary told her brain, "I will protect us." And when the brain believes you'll protect yourself, it relaxes. Now bring all of this together. Your baseline rises from a pattern of living: inconsistent sleep, constant stimulation, unstable energy, non-stop switching, unresolved tension, lack of transitions, and weak boundaries. Your baseline drops when you build rhythm, reduce artificial urgency, stabilize your body, and create clean edges in your day. You don't need to change everything at once. Pick one lever and pull it with discipline for 7 days. A consistent wake time, a shutdown time, a daily transition ritual, a focus block, fewer late-day stimulants, regular meals, 2 minutes of longer exhales twice a day, one honest boundary. You're not chasing perfection. You're building a nervous system that stops living like it's under attack. And when your baseline drops, something remarkable happens. The same challenges are still there, but they don't feel like emergencies. Your mind becomes less dramatic. Your body becomes less reactive. You stop needing constant reassurance because you're no longer living in a constant spike. The alarm system becomes quieter because it's no longer sitting on top of a pile of fuel. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. As you reflect right now, what has been quietly raising your baseline without you calling it by name? If you kept your wake time steady for a week, what would change in your mood and patience? If you created a shutdown time and stopped feeding your brain at night, what kind of mornings would you earn? If you built a simple transition ritual, what parts of your day would finally feel separate instead of one long blur? And if you protected your nervous system the way you would protect someone you love, what decisions would you make differently starting today? Chapter 5. The stories that turn discomfort into panic. You've already learned to see anxiety as a false alarm, to stop feeding it with constant checking, and to loosen the exhausting grip of certainty by returning to what you control and acting from values. You've also seen that when your nervous system baseline is too high, even small stress feels like a real threat, and the disciplined answer is rhythm, recovery, edges, and honest boundaries. Now we go to the place where anxiety becomes convincing, the stories your mind tells about what you feel, what it means, and what will happen next. Your mind is a storyteller. It has to be. It takes raw sensations and turns them into meaning. A tight chest becomes something is wrong. A delayed reply becomes I'm being rejected. A mistake becomes I'm going to ruin everything. Anxiety doesn't need a real catastrophe to thrive. It needs an interpretation. And your mind, trying to protect you, often reaches for the most urgent interpretation because urgency feels useful. This is why two people can experience the same sensation and have completely different outcomes. One person feels their heart speed up and thinks, my body is gearing up. They breathe, they move forward, they let it pass. Another person feels the same heartbeat and thinks, I'm losing control. They panic, they check, they avoid, and the loop strengthens. The sensation is the same. Story changes everything. There's a cruel trick anxiety plays. It uses your own intelligence against you. It gives you a vivid imagination and then hands you a dark script. You don't just think, what if? You see it, you feel it, you rehearse it, you argue with it, you try to prevent it, and the brain learns from rehearsal. It doesn't fully separate imagination from experience. If you repeatedly picture disaster, your nervous system treats it as training footage. It prepares as if it's real. A man named Omar learned this after a single embarrassing moment turned into months of fear. He had been in a work meeting and his voice shook when he spoke. Nobody laughed. Nobody attacked him. The meeting continued. But later that night his mind replayed it like a movie on repeat. He imagined coworkers judging him. He imagined losing respect. He imagined the next meeting and the next, each one worse. Within weeks he began speaking less, waiting longer, staying quiet to avoid feeling exposed. The fear wasn't in the meeting. The fear was in the story he kept rehearsing afterward. Anxiety thrives on three storytelling habits. The first is catastrophizing, where the mind jumps to the worst ending and treats it as likely. The second is mind reading, where you assume you know what others think and you always assume it's negative. The third is emotional reasoning, where you treat a feeling as proof. I feel afraid, so it must be dangerous. I feel guilty, so I must have done something wrong. I feel uncertain, so I must not proceed. These habits feel convincing because they come with emotion. Emotion adds weight. Weight creates urgency. Urgency demands action. And most people respond by avoiding, checking, or seeking reassurance, which teaches the brain the story was right. The goal is not to eliminate stories. You can't. The goal is to stop treating every story like a command. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. That distinction sounds simple, but it changes everything when you practice it under pressure. Here is the shift that disciplined people make. They treat thoughts as predictions, not verdicts. A thought is a mental event. It can be useful or useless, accurate or inaccurate, but it is not a court ruling. Anxiety turns thoughts into law. Discipline turns thoughts into information. The next time your mind says, "This is going to go badly," don't fight it like you're wrestling an enemy. Fighting often makes the thought louder because your brain interprets the fight as proof it matters. Instead, do something more powerful. Identify the category of thought. Is it a prediction? Is it mind reading? Is it a memory playing as a warning? Is it a perfection demand? Then name it, not as a mantra but as a label that creates distance. That's a prediction. That's mind reading. That's catastrophe. The label is a mental step backward. It puts you in the driver's seat again. Omar started doing this after he realized arguing wasn't working. He would tell himself, "Stop thinking about it," and his mind would respond with more images. So he tried something different. When the thought came, "You're going to shake again," he said quietly and plainly, prediction. When the thought came, "They think you're weak," he said, mind reading. When his body surged with adrenaline, he said, alarm. Then he returned to what he could control. A longer exhale and one action aligned with his values. Speak once early. Not perfectly, just once. There is a second practice that is even more direct. You stop seeking certainty through mental rehearsal. Many people believe that if they run enough scenarios, they'll feel safe. But rehearsal is not safety. Rehearsal is a treadmill. You run and never arrive. The mind will always find another possibility to solve because uncertainty is infinite. So you give the mind a boundary and a job. The boundary is time. The job is action. When a worry shows up outside your chosen worry window, you don't indulge it, you capture it. Write it down as a single sentence, then immediately choose the next controllable action. The act of writing tells your brain, "This is recorded." The act of moving tells your brain, "We lead with behavior." Now let's talk about the most common trap that keeps people stuck even when they're doing everything else right: reassurance addiction. Reassurance feels like relief, but relief is not resolution. Relief is a short-term chemical drop, and every time you chase it, you teach your brain, "I can't handle uncertainty without a hit of certainty." That hit might come from asking someone, checking your body, reading messages, searching online, or replaying the moment until it feels clean. But it never stays clean. So you need another hit. And another. The disciplined replacement is not never seek help. It's stop using reassurance as a ritual. You decide in advance what is reasonable. If you need factual information for a genuine decision, you get it once and act. You don't circle. You don't check. You don't keep returning to the same question hoping it will finally feel safe. Safety is not a feeling you can demand. It is a capacity you build. There is a technique that can feel almost too blunt, but it works because it cuts through the story without debate. When your anxious story shows up, answer it with acceptance of uncertainty and commitment to action. Not acceptance as surrender, but acceptance as realism. Your mind says, "What if you fail?" You answer, "Maybe I will handle it." Your mind says, "What if they judge you?" You answer, "Maybe they will, I will respect myself." Your mind says, "What if you panic?" You answer, "Maybe I will breathe and stay." Notice what you're doing. You are not trying to prove the story wrong. You're removing its power by refusing to make your life dependent on certainty. This is where self-trust becomes real. Self-trust isn't built when everything goes smoothly. Self-trust is built when you show up while your mind is loud and you still behave like the person you've decided to be. To make this practical, choose one recurring anxious story you know well. Not 10 stories, one. The one that hits you most often. Then write your disciplined response to it as a single sentence that includes uncertainty and action. "I don't know how this will go, and I will take the next step anyway." Or, "This feeling can be here and I will keep moving." Or, "My mind is predicting danger and I'm choosing my value." Then when the story arrives, you don't improvise, you execute. Because when you improvise under anxiety, you default to the old script. Execution is what rewires the brain. There is also a quiet form of storytelling that drives anxiety more than panic ever will, the identity story. "I'm the kind of person who can't handle this. I always mess things up. I'm too sensitive. I'm not built for pressure." These stories are not just thoughts. They are commands about who you are allowed to be, and if you obey them, your life stays small. You change identity stories with repeated proof, not with speeches. If you want to become someone who handles pressure, you practice pressure in small doses as you've been doing. If you want to become someone who tolerates uncertainty, you stop bargaining for guarantees as you've been training. If you want to become someone who is steady, you lower your baseline and build edges in your day as you've been building. Identity shifts when behavior becomes consistent. One day, Omar walked into a meeting with the familiar surge. His mind offered the old film. His body offered the old sensations, and he did not chase relief. He did not try to erase the feeling. He spoke early anyway, one sentence, and stayed. Later he noticed something subtle. The story had shown up, but it hadn't run the room. It was there like background noise while he lived his life in the foreground. That is the goal. Not a silent mind, but a mind that doesn't get to decide your actions. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. As you move forward, notice the exact moment a sensation becomes a story, and a story becomes a command. When your mind predicts disaster, will you treat it as a verdict, or will you label it as a prediction and return to your next controllable action? When you feel the pull of reassurance, will you recognize it as a ritual that trains mistrust, and choose to delay it long enough to prove you can ride the wave? When an old identity story whispers that you can't handle life, will you answer with debate, or will you answer with one behavior that proves the opposite? And if you practice that response consistently, what would it feel like to finally live in the foreground of your own life instead of inside the scripts your anxiety keeps trying to sell you? Chapter 6. The new way you live. From here you've moved from thinking anxiety is a personal flaw to seeing it as an overprotective alarm that can be calibrated through breath, behavior, and repetition. You've learned to stop feeding it with checking and avoidance, to loosen the grip of certainty by returning to what you control and acting from values. and to lower your baseline with rhythm, edges, and recovery. You've also seen how anxious stories turn discomfort into panic, and how labeling, acceptance of uncertainty, and disciplined action break the spell. Now this final chapter is about integration, the way you live when you stop negotiating with fear and start leading yourself, day after day. The biggest mistake people make after learning tools is treating them like emergency equipment. They only reach for them when anxiety spikes. They wait until they're in the storm, then wonder why the boat feels unstable. The calm you want is not built in crisis. It's built in routine. Anxiety becomes manageable when your daily life is designed to keep your system steady, your attention deliberate, your values clear, and your actions consistent. So you're going to build a personal operating system. Not a perfect routine, not a rigid prison, but a repeatable structure that tells your nervous system, "We know what we're doing." When your system trusts your structure, it stops firing false alarms every time uncertainty appears. Start with your mornings because the first hour sets the tone for your baseline. The anxious mind wants to begin the day by taking inventory of everything that could go wrong. It wants to check messages, check headlines, check your body, check your schedule, check the future. That is not information. That is training. So you take the first minutes back. You wake up and you anchor your body. A few slower exhales, longer on the out breath than the in breath. You let your shoulders drop on purpose. You feel your feet on the floor. Then you choose one value for the day, one word that becomes behavior: courage, presence, growth, integrity. You don't need to feel it. You commit to it. This is how you stop bargaining with sensations and start acting from identity. Then you choose one controllable action that moves your life forward before you consume anything that pulls you into other people's agendas. One page of work, one plan written on paper, one walk, one workout set, one difficult message sent, one small exposure step. The action doesn't have to be impressive. It has to be consistent. Consistency is how self-trust is built, and self-trust is what quiets anxiety at its root. During the day, you work with your attention as if it's a resource, because it is. The anxious mind wants to scatter it. It wants to switch tasks, chase novelty, and scan for threats. But you've learned that where your attention goes, anxiety grows, so you do the disciplined thing. You create focus blocks, even short ones, where you don't check, you don't bounce, you don't escape. You choose one task and you stay with it. When the itch to check appears, you label it: urge, prediction, mind reading, alarm. Then you return to the next controllable action. You will not do this perfectly. You don't need to. You need to do it enough that your brain starts learning a new normal. We don't obey every impulse. We don't treat every thought like law. We don't confuse urgency with effectiveness. We act. Now anxiety will still show up sometimes. That's not failure, it's biology, it's memory, it's old training. The difference is what you do when it shows up. You don't chase reassurance. You don't negotiate for certainty. You don't wait to feel ready. You run the sequence you've been building. First, slow your exhale. That's the break. Second, label what's happening accurately: false alarm, prediction, urge. Third, drop the demand for guarantees. Maybe I will handle it. Fourth, choose the next action aligned with your values and do it while the sensations are present, not after they leave, while they are present. That's how you teach your brain that discomfort is survivable and not a command. This is the moment that changes everything, when you act with the alarm ringing, because that act is a vote. It tells your brain, we are safe enough to move. And your brain learns from that vote more than it will ever learn from self-talk. You also keep lowering your baseline because your tools work better on a calm platform. You protect your sleep with a shutdown time. You reduce late-night stimulation. You stabilize energy with regular meals. You handle stimulants with intention instead of dependence. You discharge stress through movement. You create transitions that tell your system when the day ends and when rest begins. You tell the truth and set boundaries so your body doesn't have to hold what your mouth won't say. This is not self-care as comfort. This is self-care as leadership. You're not doing it to feel good in the moment. You're doing it because it makes you harder to shake, and that is what your anxious mind has been begging for all along. Not reassurance, but strength. Now let's talk about relapse because it will happen in some form. Not necessarily a dramatic crash, but a day where you're tired and you start checking again, or a week where you avoid the hard conversation, or a season where uncertainty hits and your mind goes back to old loops. When that happens, don't turn it into identity. Don't say, "I'm back to zero." You're not. You're a person with a nervous system that learned patterns. Patterns return under stress. Your job is not to shame yourself. Your job is to return to training. When you notice you've drifted, you tighten one screw, not all of them. 1. Re-establish a consistent wake time, rebuild your shutdown edge, recommit to one daily focus block, resume a small exposure target. Bring back your 2-minute breathing resets, one lever, 1 week. That's how you avoid the all-or-nothing trap that keeps people stuck. And remember what you learned about stories. When you relapse, your mind will offer a story. This proves I can't change. That is a prediction, not a verdict. Label it. Then act. The brain updates through behavior, not through drama. Here is what life looks like as you integrate all of this. You still feel nervous before important moments, but you no longer treat nerves as danger. You still have uncertain days, but you don't try to solve them with endless worry. You still have bodily sensations, but you don't check them like a detective searching for proof of catastrophe. You still care what people think sometimes, but you stop mind reading as if it's fact. You still want things to go well, but you stop gripping the wheel so tightly that you exhaust yourself. You become a person who can be uncomfortable without being undone. That is the goal. Not the absence of anxiety, but the presence of steadiness. Steadiness is the ability to keep moving while your mind talks. Steadiness is the ability to return to the present. Steadiness is the ability to choose values over sensations. Steadiness is the ability to let uncertainty exist without turning it into a crisis. And this steadiness changes more than your mood. It changes your decisions. People trapped in anxiety choose safe options, not because they want them, but because they fear discomfort. They avoid opportunities. They shrink their lives. They delay conversations. They protect the illusion of certainty and lose real living. When you build steadiness, you reclaim choices. You start saying yes to what matters and no to what drains you. You start pursuing what you want instead of what makes you feel temporarily safe. You start taking risks in small doses, then bigger ones, because now your body knows it can handle the feeling that comes with risk. You stop waiting for perfect confidence. Confidence becomes the result of doing hard things while uncertain, not the requirement before you start. This is why disciplined action is such a powerful cure. It is proof. Proof is what your brain needs. Anxiety is an ancient system, and it doesn't respond to speeches. It responds to evidence. So here is your commitment not as a promise you make emotionally, but as a decision you execute. You will stop treating anxiety like an emergency that must be eliminated. You will treat it like a signal that can be understood and trained. You will stop checking as a ritual. You will stop bargaining with fear for guarantees. You will lower your baseline with rhythm and recovery. You will label your stories and refuse to obey them. And you will keep taking the next controllable action, aligned with your values, even when your body is loud. Because when you do that, your life expands. And the mind that once felt like a prison becomes a tool again. A tool that warns you when it should and stays quiet when it shouldn't. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Now, as you stand at the end of this journey, imagine what changes if you stop trying to win against your mind and start leading it. What would your days look like if you measured progress by the actions you take, not by the sensations you feel? What opportunity have you been delaying because you've been waiting to feel ready? And what would happen if you moved while uncertain? When your alarm goes off next time, will you feed it with checking and avoidance? Or will you slow your exhale, label the story, and take the next step anyway? And if you live this way for the next 30 days, 90 days, a year, what kind of person would you become? A person ruled by false alarms, or a person who trusts themselves enough to live fully, even when the mind gets loud?